So it is 7:09, and I'll call this meeting to order. Thank you everybody for coming out on not coming out, for joining virtually on a Thursday night. The purpose of this meeting is to focus on the Hubbardston Public Library policies that Krista and Morgan have been working on for the past few months. So I'm going to turn it over to them to kind of guide us through the document that we see on the screen. And hopefully we'll make some, I don't know if we'll get through all of it tonight, but hopefully we'll make some progress. So Morgan and Krista, thank you for working on this. And do you want to get us started?
Sure. I can't see Morgan anymore. Is she?
Oh, did we lose? Yeah, it looks like we lost her. Huh.
Okay, well, I can get started. So she knows this part. So what Chris was asking about is this first page. There was a note on here. There's a couple of notes of things that we wanted, to ask specifically about the trustees. I mean, some of this is just about the wording, but some of it is, is it saying what we wanted to say? So the first note was just as a way to organize these sort of somewhat separately developed policies into a set. So this was an idea of how to put them together under these different categories, like patrons, staff, volunteers, trustees, library materials, facilities, and equipment. So that, I guess we could start with this, or maybe we want to work on this at the end after we decide that we want all these pieces in there.
So at first glance, this chronology makes sense to me. But I think we should also revisit it at the end, because we're not quite sure how the discussion is going to go. And so things may get moved around or things may change, that we might need to do some changes to it. But like first glance, like, yes, this makes sense to me, I think.
Okay, so I guess we can, well, the next page is the, I don't know if you can scroll down, Chris, but the next page is the mission, vision, and value statement, which we, we worked on as part of the strategic plan, which I think, were you, Alicia and Chris, you were part of that too, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think this all happened at least before I joined.
Right before, yeah,
I
think you're right.
Not that I have any objection to anything that's said, but.
Okay, hi Morgan.
Hi.
So we just looked at the table of contents, and now we're on the next page. So I was just explaining that we had just reviewed and approved these statements as part of the strategic plan. So I think we can move on from that. I mean, these are the kind of things we want to review, at least every 5 years for our plan, but I don't think we really need to do it again right now.
I would say that with any and all of the policies, like the mission statement, vision, value statement, those were approved. And I think, as I had said, I think it was without Chris and Alicia the last time. If you see anything and you would wish the wording changed on any of the policies, as we go through them, by all means, mention that. And then when we get to the point of approving it, what I would foresee afterwards is that as a document, the policies can be amended and updated in our general meeting minutes. It would say such and such a policy, the wording would change from this to that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to propose that mission, vision, and values get reviewed every time we do the strategic plan.
Mhm.
Just so that there's continuity, like with the plan, with the mission and vision. Like, I feel like this could be reviewed, like every time we start a new strategic plan, we can revise it or review it, at least for revisions.
Are you thinking that the policy should be reviewed every 5 years or more frequently?
I don't have a strong thought on that because I think that can come up as things are appropriate, but I feel like mission, vision, and values, like those are things like we don't want to keep changing them every year
Yeah.
necessarily. Like I think we need to have some sort of consistency with those. But with the policies, if things come up that need to be modified, I think policies should be reviewed on a regular basis, and we can decide what that basis is. But for me, mission, vision, and values feel a little bit different from policy.
Okay.
And I think some continuity with that, to give it a chance to kind of stick, is important.
Okay.
But please feel free to disagree with me. Like,
No. And I agree. I think it should be up to the board to kind of set a review policy. I think that Krista and I both had a goal of let's try to get as many comprehensive plans as possible. And if she didn't give a background, we had done a comparison with local libraries, reviewing what OWLS had as well as what MBLC had for recommended policies. And there may be others out there that are introduced to us or some that we have included in this document that you do not feel are necessary for our library.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the smaller town libraries have, sort of fewer, less detailed policies than the bigger urban ones tend to have because it seems like they have a need for a lot of very specific, sort of behavioral things, which, we may need, but, we kind of tried to streamline it. So should we move on to the next page?
Yeah.
Let's see, what does that say? There's a comment on here.
Improved grammatic changing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if we wanted to do that part of it now or not, but there were just some things I noticed when I was reading over it. How do we want to do this? Do we want to read it or?
Are there general comments with regards to the general conduct policy? And then as we go through, if there are any additional ones, I would say let's take the notes, Krista, and I would agree and I approve. I would second, yeah, let's change report.
Are you on
So-
page 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one note on page 3, which maybe is going to open a can of worms.
Please.
But I can't somehow see, well, where are you on page 3? The bottom of page 3, there's a reference to guns under behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
We,
And
we,
given the
we don't
fact-
have a policy about guns in here, but
How-
it was,
Well,
And
this is all before the town, the special town meeting. I would put up a vote for just leaving that out, period, and not
Correct.
having a policy.
let's do that.
yeah, I agree.
I
Yep.
think at the time we were just wondering whether we should,
Right. No, I understand the
Yeah.
logic of it being there, but I think things have moved on a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were drafting these
Um,
last spring and last fall.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if we just don't say anything, then we can just wait to see what happens.
Exactly.
Okay, that's my 2 cents.
thank you.
And
Okay.
Krista and Morgan, are the references to the Massachusetts
General laws.
general laws, thank you, are these verbatim or are these or are they like
A lot of it
paraphrased?
is. A lot of
Okay.
it is kind of taking a longer one and taking like the first sentence of it or key phrase from it.
I think
Okay.
it's like a summary, and then the link is there because that would be the justification. You
Okay.
know, if somebody is creating a disturbance or whatever, and they're unhappy about being asked to leave, then, this is the law that says, we have the ability to do that.
Okay. Okay, yep, that makes sense. I was just curious because I saw all the citations into them and didn't have a chance to go in and actually look at them all, but thank you for that
And
clarification.
our reason for that, and one of the things that we may be setting ourselves up for of links might break,
Mm.
they may change.
Mhm.
So Chris and I had mentioned, and I think it's part of the library trustees calendar is to do a review. So once policies are kind of approved, I would foresee like a subcommittee policy, like a policy subcommittee at least once a year going in and saying, checking all the links, are they still valid? Does it still make sense, and things like that? And or when things are brought to the attention of the trustees as need be, that we revise policies.
Mhm. The only other thing I had on this page was, and you have it highlighted, is the third bullet point under use of library materials. Damaging or defacing library property or theft of materials will result in consequences. It's very vague. Is it intentionally vague?
So
Well-
part of it,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you can likewise go in as we were moving policies around and things like that of where things fall. I think that's one of those of like, and I'd have to go to see where it is. I think under page 4 is addressing violations.
It's actually part of this 99A. It's a whole section on libraries, theft of materials, or property destruction of records.
And so perhaps we can rephrase the consequences to see addressing violations with a link, even though it's like the very next page, in case it moves. And if we move locations,
We could say as described below or something.
I feel like something like
and that's
that
where
could
we
be.
also want feedback from the trustees. Is this appropriate? How do we feel about this? Is this in fitting? And keeping in mind, like the incident with, I think it was a skateboard down at the Worcester Public Library. So how do we feel it would be best to address concerns at Hubbardston Public Library to keep patrons and staff safe?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think we
wonder if
need.
we could say something like will result in consequences ranging from a verbal warning from library staff to um, to being banned. I'm just looking at what's down below it. There's 4 items, and just do like the verbal warning to being banned from the library. It just
Yeah,
consequences just kind of hangs out there and just kind of threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be explained, but they're we put 2 different things together. Like damaging and defacing property is one thing, but theft of materials is really more related to like their
But
borrowing
But at the
privileges.
same time, the consequences could vary in a range between verbal warnings
Okay.
up to
Banning from the library. I mean, this is where Chris V needs to weigh in too. I mean, are we,
Mhm.
is it
are we going to
appropriate?
ban people from the library, or do we want to?
And I mean, do we want to just have the language there so it's a possibility?
We do have.
In all honesty, our patrons are really incredibly well behaved. The worst I got is over enthusiastic toddlers who are, screaming at the top of their lungs. And most people who end up damaging items are incredibly apologetic and are trying to fix it, not are are not doing it on purpose, because we're a small town. Do I think that these policies should be in place? Yeah, but I don't think that there's going to be a point where
We need
I
to
haven't
use-
reached a point where I have had to do anything outside of number one.
Yeah.
And 2, 3, and 4, I've never had to deal with.
And let's hope that's always the case, but if it were a more severe, in thinking on the case of the worst case scenario of what could happen, what would we want to have as policies? Do we want to keep it gentle and vague, or do we want to have more stronger language available?
Well, we do explain, on page, I guess it's page 3. We do explain what, what the consequences are. But we need to put something up here, but in addition to consequences.
How about consequences in regard to the, balance to the, whatever it is they've done. So, so it's not specific, appropriate to the infraction or whatever you want to.
Yep. I think that's a good, I like that, Alicia.
Wait, infraction, do we want infraction or
Well,
violation?
Or whatever, sliding scale of consequences.
And then just end it there?
Yep.
Yeah.
think that
'cause
works.
You don't know what they're gonna do, so whatever is commensurate with the infraction is.
Okay,
You're
so
not gonna-
I don't know if we want to get rid of all this right now, all these references. So I could just,
Oh, I think those could stay. I think I was thinking still on page 3.
So under
Or
addressing
page 2. I'm
violations.
sorry, I was on page 2. I was on page 2. Like, I don't think we need to get rid of the addressing the violations necessarily, but I was
okay,
just thinking the consequences were just kind of hanging out there and it just needed
Yeah.
something to wrap it up for me.
so is this good? Damaging or defacing library property or theft of materials will result in consequences appropriate to the level of the violation.
That sounds good.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah,
Can anyone
that
hear
works
me?
for me.
I can hear you.
I had to use another computer, sorry.
It's good to see you. I'm not sure what that, well, that was the section. That I think we can get rid of.
I don't think you even need to say level, just appropriate to the violation
Okay,
I
or
agree.
commensurate with the violation.
do you like commensurate? I'm fine with that.
Either way, yeah, commensurate's a nice word.
I don't know how to spell it.
I was gonna say,
There we go. Okay.
that looks good. Wouldn't it automatically spell it for you?
Yeah, it did. It helped me out.
Okay.
So this is just this law section, which maybe they could be at the end of these things as appropriate. I don't know, like we have down below. I guess we can decide that part at the end, whether we want it on every line or,
The
just at
Mass
the-
General Law.
Yeah,
I think especially where it does reference different chapters and things like
Yeah.
that, and it would be different. I would find it more beneficial to have it. Now, whether or not we create the links, like sometimes what you can do is you can create the entire sentence becomes like a link to
Mhm.
the law. I don't know whether or not we want to do that. But it's a matter of like formatting. But I think it would be beneficial and strengthens the bylaw or the policies, sorry, to have the backing of where we're pulling information from
Yeah.
and why we're including it.
Hmm.
Well, I
I-
just
I
noticed we
agree.
have, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I agree with what Morgan said. I wouldn't hyperlink the entire bullet point, but maybe like the first word of each bullet point, just because an entire hyperlink bullet point's a lot, but
It is a lot.
that's formatting. But I like the idea of keeping it there, and I do like the idea of maybe having a section of it linked.
Or at the
Instead of
end,
the citation.
or at the end, if we said link to law or law link or
Mhm.
see further or more information or for something like that.
Yeah, I just
Those-
noticed that at the top, we have it at the beginning of the section, and at the bottom, we have it after every item, so, you know.
Well, the reason being is that for under the library use of materials, it is one item.
Mm.
Under the prohibited behaviors, it was different. Like chapter 99 and 272 are in different places.
Good point.
I think it's useful, actually, however you do the link, to have it with each item, because if somebody has a problem or they're, worried about the justification of something, they're not going to look through a whole page of footnotes. They're going to look for the one that can, somehow connects to what it is they're just questioning. So they can go right from consumption of alcohol or whatever to that particular chapter without having to worry about all the other ones. I just think it's clearer this way.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that Krista and I had is that there's a lot of things that felt like it could be, for instance, under general conduct or under borrowing policy, under solicitation, under here. So we're trying to find an appropriate balance. And I think one of the ways of doing that, if we go back to seeing like under use of library materials, we started to include the see also in other areas that might apply. So you'll see that in other policies where we say also see.
Okay. We can go back and add, what Alicia was just saying, we can go back and add the right section. I don't want to do it now because I don't want to put the wrong thing in there, but we can definitely do that. Like it would say, MGL 266 section 99A right here, because that's the one that's relevant. So we can definitely do that.
Excuse me,
Yes, Tom.
aren't you making it pretty hard? When you build all these references and sub-references, aren't you making it pretty hard to do the next revision?
In with regards to and how, what are your considerations of making it harder?
My imagination turns this thing into quite a spider web. You change one paragraph and then you have to go find 3 or 4 other paragraphs that may have referred to it, and you have to change it.
That is a consideration.
I'm in the keep it simple school.
Yeah,
Well,
that is a consideration.
but this particular section, it's only referring to the law that exists relating to that. So I think your point is taken, and that's what Morgan was just saying. If Chris, if you can scroll up a tiny bit on this, like what you just was saying about under use of library materials, we have a C also. So there are a few places where it kind of goes back and forth, but hopefully we don't have too many of those.
Well, in addition, I also think that even if we edit paragraphs, that under the use of library materials where we say see also borrowing policy. I feel like even if we were to edit the borrowing policy, that is still going to apply to the use of library materials. So even though we may change the context of that in future edits, it would still be relevant to use of library materials.
Okay.
No, I
And it
mean, I
might
think
not,
your point is taken, Tom, for sure. So we do want to watch for that, but I think it's not as much of an issue in this one section.
another concern that I heard Tom have, which may, I'm looking for feedback myself on trustees reading the policies and how it reads and what kind of impression it gives of Hubbardston Library policies. When we looked at local libraries, Levy Haywood is a good example, whereas Boynton Library in Templeton does not have much of a policy section. We looked at Barry and Westminster Forbush, Princeton, I think a few other libraries. They varied. We also then looked at some really large libraries out in Boston, etc. And she alluded to, I think library also dictates how the policies kind of are presented. But we found a lot of gaps at various libraries. And yeah, I'm excited to hear what the other trustees think with regards to the policies. Is it too much, Tom?
No, I think it's comprehensive, but like anything like this, I think it'll follow the 80-20 rule. 20% of these policies will govern 80% of our actions.
Mhm.
And it goes beyond perhaps what we need, but we may need that particular one someday. If it be library cards or renting out borrowed equipment or whatever it is. I think it's
Okay.
there. I think it's there. We're not going to use this every day, all of it every day.
I agree.
And I think
So-
that goes back to what Chris B was saying, was that, typically our library patrons are good, but for those
Yep.
instances where we have issues, we want to have something we can point to.
I also think out of all the library materials, I don't think our patrons are going to be paying that much attention to the library policies. They'll probably be coming in for books and other things.
Okay.
My two thoughts. But it's
Agreed.
better to have and to have it ahead of any possible issue. So it's there rather than saying, I wish we had this in place.
So page 3 is, we were just wondering, one more page, just wondering whether addressing violations should be here or, somewhere else. And maybe we can't answer that now. That's what this comment says, like, do we want it here under general conduct or do we want it, somewhere else because maybe some other parts of the policy relate to it? I kind of feel like it should just be here because it's kind of at the beginning and easy to find. I don't know. And then also, are we okay with the wording and the levels?
I think it fits and it reads well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll just get rid of this comment then.
When we scroll down to the bottom of the next page, have you already mentioned, Krista, like at the bottom of the pages, how we have like Hubbardston Public Libraries policies adopted by library trustees on, and then it has date. So one of our thoughts of addressing it is, when the policies are approved, we have that date. When they're either, when we go back and we revise them, or we find we've done an annual audit, or we set up a different schedule for auditing the policies, we would go through and then have a trustees vote and therefore update that date. Does that make sense? So we know what is the most current policies, and any edits we assume that we would be recorded in the minutes of the regular trustee meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so we can edit sections without having to redo the whole thing.
So you're
Yeah.
saying if we amend the child safety and conduct policy, we would just amend the date on page 4?
Four and
No,
five,
it
I
would
guess.
And if you
amend it.
didn't do anything to the internet policy, that date would stay the same?
It would
I think
amend
so.
the date to the policies in general, and what I would foresee, so the policies themselves have a new date. And under the trustees minutes, it would say there was a vote, whatever the vote was, the old version, new, kind of like what we do with our town meetings. So it's in line with what our town meetings are.
I think it will help us keep track of, you know, when we've looked at different things too, if we have a date
Right.
on each section,
Mhm.
you know, and some things may never change again, and some things may need to change,
Right.
you know, more often. So like the whole policy could be reviewed. I mean, the whole set of policies could be reviewed together, but if we kind of keep it section by section, then it'll be easier for us to keep track of what we've looked at.
I'm not sure I'm fully getting it. Um, is there like a review date and then updated date? Because I mean, I imagine you'd want people to know that you've reviewed the policies on a regular basis, and then they've been and some have been updated. Is that what you were saying? I'm not sure if I
You know,
fully
I think it
understood.
is confusing now because we have this as like a footer. So every page says the same thing. I think we might have to say,
Well, it does and it doesn't. So if we go up to, for instance, an example being the very first one, missions, visions, values statement. So that's one to where it provides an example. And so on page 1, it says like approved 5/2 of 2024. Okay.
hmm,
Mhm. Yes, yes.
oh,
One suggestion,
Yes.
and I don't think we want to do this, but oftentimes a document like this will have each paragraph numbered, you know, like
mm,
military numbering 1.1, 1.2. And then at the end, they have one sheet of paper, which is a record of the changes. It'll say
Correct.
things like, this entire document was rewritten and adopted on January, whatever it is, 25th. Then the next line, when something gets revised, it'll say, revise the, what was that, child care policy or library materials policy. And it'll just say a revised library materials policy, February 8th. And you have a document that is in the unrevised state, and you have a document with a new name and a new revision on February 8th that is in the revised state. And if someone cares to compare them, they have two things that they can compare. You can even compare them electronically. So I don't think numbering is necessary, but I would accumulate the adoption and revisions on a single page at the end. Anybody think that's any good, or is that nuts?
well, I don't know if we need to keep all the old ones. I mean, I guess we could, but
No.
we could also just change this footer, you know,
Yeah.
and just have the separate date like we just looked at on the mission, vision, value, you know, like this section approved on this date.
When we get done, you can adopt this whole thing on the current
Right.
date of adopting. And you wipe away all the prior revisions and dates and all that stuff. You don't have to keep track of the history. Only keep track of the history moving forward.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe we can worry about that later. So
Tom, I think your idea of versioning is good. I mean, we see that, you see that a lot in like open educational resources where they talk about the changes that they made. I don't know how that would play out fully here, but I don't.
Okay, I'm just putting in the minutes of policies. Consider how to label individual sections so they can be reviewed and revised without redoing the whole document. Adopt versioning, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like you have the document sectioned out adequately so that you could use a footer and have it reference the date for that particular section. I don't know, whatever is simpler, I guess. Keep it simple and easy to follow.
Yeah. And the good news is what Sham just said. We're starting with everything, will have the same date. So then just as we make changes, we have to figure it out.
Yep.
I've also added a note to the best way that I could see was back again on that mission, vision, value statement where we had that approved date. I added a note of consider adding a versioning to accurately edits.
Okay.
So we can go back and as trustees, I think this is something to decide whether at the end we want to have a record sheet, how we want to record. So that's something that I would say, let's have a thinking cap and we can kind of come up with what is the best policy for keeping track of edits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with the children, we have to figure out the age, or if we want to say an age. That was the main.
So Chris B, if you and or Trish, Ann, etc., have insight on this, I would refer primarily to our library staff on how they feel with regards to the ages that we input onto the child safety and conduct policy and that we refer to the library staff on this.
So I am uncertain as to what Tricia or Ann would recommend, but I'm pretty sure that it was elementary age children or younger should be with a parent or guardian. Nowadays, you end up seeing at least even middle schoolers with their parents. So I'd be okay if there was like sixth grade and up could be solo, because now they're starting to have a lot more responsibility for
So we could
themselves.
take out the age and say, does the center school only go to 5th grade?
Yes. And as you noted back in September of 2024, the kids can't, they just don't leave school. They have to have somebody with them to pick them up if they're coming out as walkers. A parent or a guardian has to be, or an authorized person who's clear to take the child has to sign them out. They don't just go home.
Okay. So we could just say must accompany their. We just take out the age and just have 5th grade.
Parent, guardian, or caregiver must accompany their child, elementary school age child.
Okay. Because there's two things. The first one is about using the computers, and the second one is about being in the library.
Yeah, but I mean, the first thing you mention is that, so the first thing that you end up mentioning is that they, whether or not they're by themselves using the computer. It's a public area, so I mean, that would be a parental thing. If they don't want them using the computer, then they shouldn't be in the library by themselves. Nowadays, kids have their own phones, but though at like, second
Yeah.
grade or something. So,
So are you
So, yeah,
saying
I
we
would
don't
say-
need it in here in this part?
no, I think you should have it because you don't want to have a toddler coming over and start banging on the laptop. Parent or guardian or caregiver must accompany their elementary school child or younger when using the computer.
Elementary school or younger?
Yeah, elementary school or younger child. Well, that doesn't work out. Elementary school child or I don't know.
How about up to elementary school or up to middle school age? That'll get to the toddlers to 5th grade.
That would work.
Or up to middle school.
Yep.
Up to middle school, I think is appropriate.
Yeah.
When using the computer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or middle school age. And anyway, wouldn't a librarian have to help them use, they have to help
Oh,
them start the computer?
nope. Well, yeah, we would.
On all the time? It's on all
It-
the
it-
time? It's connected to the
Sometimes
internet?
it's on, sometimes it's off. It depends
Okay.
on, honestly, the people who come in to use the computer are older people
Mhm.
whose printer isn't working and they need to print something up.
Mhm. Okay.
But
Well, I'd
Right.
say
It's
up
better
to
to
middle
have
school, yeah.
Oh, so the next thing, it was these very specific things that that were previous policy, but there's, concern about the, the door that can be opened. And I think some of these were from other libraries, like the bathroom. So we didn't actually put those in here, but
Mm.
with the water dispenser, that was the other thing.
And then when we go down to that next unattended children, I would almost adopt the wording that we just worked on of parents or parents or caregivers may not leave their children up to middle school age unattended in the library. Does that make sense?
yes.
Wouldn't it be may not leave their children under middle school age?
Okay.
Yeah, I like that one better.
Okay.
And I think we
Now-
can even take out age.
Oh, go ahead. Go
of-
ahead, Morgan. I just read it
I was-
through properly. Never mind.
I was going to say on the next one, with the permission of library staff, children should be lowercase
Okay.
of middle school age, and I would just take out the ages.
Okay.
But this is again with Chris's permission. So they may be left for unattended for periods of time while attending library programs, while doing research for school projects, or finding materials to check out. If a child's behavior disrupts other library users, the child will be asked to leave the building after being warned.
Well, the problem with that
I
is
would
you
like to
ask
take a
the child to
pause on.
leave. They can't just leave.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
agree with you, Alicia. Like that gave me pause. Like, you're
Yeah.
not gonna
Put
send
the kid
kids out
outside.
into the street, you know?
So just take this
A
out.
parent will be called, or a parent will be called, or parent will
A
be
parent
called.
recalled
for
or,
its behavior or
you know.
something, but you can't just ask the child to leave.
Well, also, I also feel as though we already have behaviors addressed in the patron behavior policy, the general
Mhm.
conduct policy. And in that, we had stated with regards to conduct will range as appropriate for the violation.
Mhm.
Correct. So I feel again that in the most instances, we're not going to have that many violations, but then it would be kind of common sense of if a child's disruptive, of warning the child and then contacting parents.
Mhm.
Does that make sense, Crispy?
Yeah,
Is there other wording or other actions that you would like for us to include?
Yeah, I don't want to have, uh, it's tough because chances are the children that we're going to have are going to be, the ones who live in and around Main Street anyway.
Mhm.
And they may end up walking here by themselves. So they could conceivably be done that. But again, I would be very hesitant about asking a child to leave. I would have them sit in the adult reading room at the table until they're collected by their parent.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what about this? The parent will be contacted after.
Rather than
Well, you're not
saying
warning the
specific
parents, you're warning the.
actions,
Yeah, it's syntax is wrong. Let's see.
Yeah.
um, we may want to say just simply that being parents or care providers or caregivers should be aware of the library's general conduct policy. If we left it with that. I would not want to put into the policies necessarily like a narrow actions or same actions and then putting it on the responsibility of library staff to follow through on that. Does that make sense?
So
What I-
just
what I
take
would-
this out.
I would, because I think there may be each situation may call for different courses of action. So if we put specific wording in, I think instead if we left it very general and say that with regards to behavior, parents or caregivers should be aware of the general conduct policy.
You could just say see general conduct policy or something.
Yeah, something like that. And in that policy, we've already stated with regards to addressing violations and that
It's just one L in general, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm using a different keyboard. It's not so good.
At the
That's my
start of the
excuse.
second bullet point, it says with permission of library staff. Do we need that, or are we just saying children of middle school age may be left unattended for periods of time? Like, do they have to check in with the library director or whoever's at the desk every time? Or
I would think not. I mean,
Okay. So do we want to keep this part above the way it is, the stuff that's still highlighted?
I think it needs to be rearranged a little bit.
Okay.
Because the first bullet points, parents are held liable for damage, and then the next 3 bullet points are related to books and computer use.
Yeah. So we could move
And
this
then the
one
bottom
down.
2 are again related to like behavior in the library. So the 2 bottom bullet points I feel like should go up under the first bullet point. So one's about behaviors and then one's about computer use, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I feel about, I feel like the last bullet point is super specific. I don't really know that we need that, but if people want to keep it, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I think there's more risk of like having books fall off a shelf and hit somebody in the head than using the water fountain. So,
Well, the issue with the water fountain is there's no drain to it. So the toddlers especially are very attracted to turning the water on and letting it go because they're so fascinated, not realizing that it immediately overflows onto the
Oh.
floor.
okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you for that context because I
No problem.
So,
And the other thing about the door is that when we have story time, I turn the handicapped access off because the kids love the button and they will hit it. And if no one is paying attention, they'll push the door, the door will open and then they could walk out and then they could go down the stairs and end up on
Okay.
68, which is why I turn it off. And that's why that particular line is in there.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
so do we want to keep this part or no?
I would keep it.
Okay.
I think it's better to have it said.
Yeah.
The other question is thinking ahead where we will eventually take over the first floor, the main floor. Do we want to change singular exit to plural exits?
That's a good point. I'm just trying to fix the spacing here. Oops, that didn't work. To do that later.
I don't want to get in the weeds on wordsmithing, but is child safety the right heading? I mean, some of it is child safety, some of it, but like a parent or guardian can be held liable for damage to library property. Like that's not child safety.
Maybe we could just take this heading out.
Maybe we could take both headings out of child safety and conduct, or just child safety especially, because at the top we have child safety and conduct. And the other one below really does pertain to unattended.
Mm-hmm.
We could keep unattended, but just remove the top header. And I don't mean the remove
this one that's highlighted or the one at the very top?
Okay. The highlighted one.
Oh, oops, sorry. Well, we can worry about the spacing later.
Exactly. Yep. We can. Chris B, as you read these and under unattended children and otherwise, is there anything that stands out that you feel like we don't need to spell out and or something that we're missing? And likewise with the trustees. The other thing is, as we read, I don't know how far we want to go tonight, how it digests and how you feel about the policies. So I'm happy to take these in chunks, review them as trustees, and then when we're comfortable, I don't feel rushed to publish these policies. But I'm very grateful for everybody coming together and starting to tackle them.
Yeah, I feel like we're not going to get through 33 pages tonight.
No. No.
So,
and we're coming up on an hour as well. So depending on how you guys feel, this may be a good we've gone through a lot of the general conduct, and even with the child safety, this is all kind of like behavioral. The next few of when we look at internet and wireless, the cell phone, the food and beverage, those all kind of fit together. So we can see. At the very top of page 5 is another instance in which we started to say, you know, this is where Krista and I started to pull things from other policies and say, you know, these interrelate. We said, in addition to the aforementioned policies, we encourage patrons to review the related policies such as programming, building and facility use, library owned equipment, and our mission statement for further related guidance. And the intent behind that is that each one would be linked to where, depending on how we have these published, that if it's one running document, that would run down to the section that they work on or otherwise. But we felt that rather than having it reiterated so many times, that we would state it where it felt like it fit strongest, and then just have it interrelated saying, please also see, or
This
please
kind of needs to be with the general conduct, though. I think that's why.
So this is where we've said it multiple times, and we may need to add it to the general conduct, but those were the ones that we also felt were appropriate to list under child safety and conduct. Because so I don't mind adding it to the general conduct.
Yeah.
So
Just
I feel like when we had done this, Krista, the children, so this was all under general conduct. So
mhm.
child was within the general conduct, and then we're coming to the end of it. So it
So
is
maybe
actually end of general conduct.
maybe it needs to be like near the heading or something. I don't know. I mean, the problem is it's not a problem, but we worked on this kind of over time. So we had different ideas about how to organize it at different times. But it's true that the policies are really interrelated.
So
If
this
those
is one
sections of the policies follow, I guess I just don't see the need for that
Yeah.
unless it's repeated after each section.
So what I'm seeing, and I almost feel, so the document tabs is not necessarily showing up on the trustees view. But I believe the way it is organized is that child safety and conduct is still within and under the general heading of the general conduct policy. So under the general conduct, we had use of library materials, we had prohibited behaviors, addressing violations, child safety and conduct policy, unattended children. So that's all under general conduct. And then at the very end of it is this in addition to. So that in addition to statement applies to the entire policy. So I think that's one of those of, as we work on the formatting.
Mhm. There's a little bit of issue with the formatting because general conduct is a heading 1 and use of library materials is a heading 3. But I think that's just something that we'll just need to work through later is to get the headings correct.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I do have a question under, and I don't have any strong thoughts on this. Under unattended children, the first 2 bullet points that we worked on, they're just the opposite of each other. Like the first one says, if you're under middle-aged school, you need a parent or caregiver. If you're over middle age or middle school, you don't. Like, do we want to delineate both of them? Like, is it helpful to have it delineated that way, or do you just make one of those statements?
Well, they're two different age groups though,
They're
right?
both, well, one's like, I guess if you're saying one and then aren't you assuming the other would not be?
So
Well,
for
and-
instance, stating, I think it's more important to state that parents and care providers may not leave children under middle school age unattended in the library, even during
Yeah.
programs. See general conduct policy.
And if you
Well,
say that, then you're saying that children middle age or higher can be left unattended. Like, I'm just wondering, is it redundant is what I'm asking? In a,
I think
in the opposite
it's
way.
important to have both because like what Morgan just pointed out, I mean, this is what's important in this one during programs. You know, you can't bring your kid to story time and run down the street.
Mm.
I don't know what you would do, right, you know, in a short time in Hubbardston, but you know, I think that's what's important about that one. I mean, to me, they're both valuable, but
Okay, that's fine. I was just asking. So,
what do you think, Chris B?
That's a good question. As much as I don't want to make it more complicated, having the two separate bullet points, I think makes it so that the people who might say, well, it doesn't say it in the policy, we can say, yes, it does. You know, because it's implied if you just use the second one that, you know, that children of middle school age may be left unattended, but there's nothing there about being younger than middle school age. Whereas, I mean, so what you could conceivably do is just use the first one because then it implies that older kids could come in and use the library.
Thing, Connie, just get rid of this
I-
one.
yeah, one of them. They just,
Mhm.
it felt redundant. It felt like one was saying one thing and then the other one was just saying it in the reverse way. So, but
I feel like we could do without the second one. I don't think it would harm much to get rid of it unless the trustees feel it adds value.
Not necessarily. I mean,
I'm okay with getting rid of it.
yeah.
Okay, let's simplify.
Ooh, a blank page.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I just got rid of the blank page that was created when we moved stuff up. So this should be pretty easy actually, or pretty straightforward because we use this policy that the CW Mars requires for all of the member libraries because they provide us with the internet access. So this statement actually shows up on the, you know, when you agree to the Wi-Fi access. So this just explains that we're part of that consortium, and here's the policy that people have to agree with. So,
so
and
in
actually,
essence,
I
this
think,
really can't be changed, right? Like, this is kind of what it is.
right.
Mm.
Are the trustees comfortable with it? And
Fine.
in addition to what is listed, is there anything that you feel like we need to state?
In the second paragraph under CW Mars Internet Policy, last sentence, CW Mars member library patrons and staff must follow the policies of this network. That means CW Mars, this network?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I copied it. Oh, actually, this is a link, I think, if we want to go and look at it, but we could double check that.
Well, the link that we have lands us on a 404, so that's our first failure.
This one?
Yeah.
Mine works. It just goes to all their policies.
Oh, mine doesn't.
Huh.
I'm not pushing any buttons. I'll lose everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. It went
So
to maybe it's.
I just went through the links. The CW Mars Internet Policy link that's listed twice at the top, that works. The access to electronic information is going to 404.
Oh, this
that
one. I see. You're
Yep,
talking
right
about
here.
this one.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I don't know if we want to have it linked twice. Patrons must agree to this CW Mars Internet Policy. And then we have CW Mars Internet Policy. They're both a link. So where we haven't had the link on headers before, we may want to remove that. But that I think comes down to later when we do formatting. And I think that's into the weeds that we can
Mhm.
minor things.
Okay. Well, they updated this link on their page. I just looked at it, so I can fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, that should work now. So do you want to take something out here? Is that what you're saying? I'm sorry.
I was thinking of just simplifying and only having one link. So I was thinking as a CW Mars Internet Policy does not necessarily need to be a link. But
Okay.
again,
Okay, I'm fine with that. And that one should be okay.
It's okay. You're okay.
The cell phone one is also very short if we want to do one more thing. Or if we don't, that's fine.
Okay.
The only thing I would take out of the cell phone policy is the last sentence, because we don't say that anyplace else. I
Okay.
think it's understood that it's reviewed.
Yeah, that's fine. The food one is pretty straightforward, and then after that, it probably gets a little more complicated. Like we had a lot of trouble with the solicitation policy.
how are the trustees feeling? Do you guys want to try to tackle the food and beverage policy?
I'm
I just
okay
was a-
doing food and beverage and then stopping after that.
I think
Okay.
that's good.
It almost seems to be promoting it's okay to bring your lunch as long as it doesn't, leave a residue. I wasn't sure how that. It seems like you're encouraging people to eat, which is fine if that's what we want to do.
So I think what we wanted to do is to encompass the events in which food has been at the library and may be at the library. Speaking of upcoming events that food may be incorporated and or drinks are going to be incorporated in the library, because it may happen. And given the nature of a library, I think that our concern was specifically with regards to cleanliness and um, I think it's
I
kind
think
of
that's
Right, no, I get that, but this doesn't say anything about events or periodic things. It just says
that comes down.
this is what's
That-
going to happen.
So below of like special
Mm-hmm.
events at the very bottom.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Maybe
I
we
think
should put that at
Alicia's
the
point
top.
is good. It makes it sound like we're expecting people to bring food. We just want to limit
Yeah.
what they're bringing. So
What about
maybe,
putting the special events thing at the top?
Okay.
Oh,
and
what
then
is
just
the
say,
goal of the policy? What is the goal of this policy? Do we
It's a
allow
lot
food and
easier.
beverage in the library?
you know, let's let Chris weigh in on that too.
I agree with,
You first, Morgan.
oh, I was gonna say, I agree with Alicia's suggestion of editing it of the order, because if we put special events and then also responsibilities of patrons at the very top, and then say with regards to the food, of like setting the tone of under special events, and when it is permitted, what the responsibility is.
But I think we need some kind of statement like, you know, we prefer you don't eat in the library. But if you
I mean,
do,
Well,
is that the policy
do we
though? I
not
guess,
prefer-
I guess, like, I'd be, like, I mean, are kids allowed to bring in their goldfish, like during story time?
I have no idea if they're allowed to do that, but I mean, we offer candy at the front counter, so I think the implication is that food is allowed.
So then I think it could be like food is permitted in the library. But
Yeah, but
please
we just
adhere
ask
to
them if they're going to bring food in, just, eat neatly, don't throw it around, and clean up after yourself.
what if we say like snack food is permitted in the library or something like that?
Well, I think that's what we say under the maintain cleanliness of light packaged snacks are preferable. Sealed water bottles, what we're saying.
I mean, could we
So,
say food and drink are permitted in the library? The following food and beverage guidelines are set to ensure. I mean, can you just, if
Yep.
we're allowing food and beverage, can we just say that?
Whoops.
I think so.
Whatever that means. Sorry.
Oh, we lost Tom?
Oh,
Tom's there. Well, I don't know which one is
No,
Tom.
he's gone.
yeah, I think
You
we
know,
lost them.
this is an example of taking wording from some other libraries. So, you know, we don't necessarily have to have it laid out this way either. Lines are set. Okay, maybe that's better.
And then I wonder, do we need responsibilities of patrons? Because it feels like a lot of those are redundant under the maintain cleanliness, under the above bullet points.
Yeah, I almost think these are the most important things rather than some of these other ones. I don't know.
So
So
instead
then
of
maybe
having
we
the,
get rid of the other,
So what's the designated area?
I would almost take, I like the maintain cleanliness, promote quiet environment, ensure safety. I would take that bullet under responsibilities of patrons and say patrons may consume food and beverage only in designated areas and discretion of library staff under maintain cleanliness. And take the header of responsibility of patrons and move that above maintain cleanliness in those 3 bullets. Because I think the rest is redundant and stated of clean up after yourself.
Well, I think
See,
it's
this,
not just,
incorporate
oh,
them.
I'm sorry.
no, go
I,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't think it's just having crumbs and spilled water. I think it's having sticky fingers thumbing through library books is a problem.
Mhm.
So if you're saying that you can consume food and beverages in a designated area, what is the designated area?
Yeah, that's a
I
good
wouldn't
question.
know what it was.
I would just say the patrons may consume food and beverages in the library. Because I'm not going to tell people where they can and can't eat. This sounds like it's going to be designed for a much larger library. I mean, we'll see them eating.
Mhm. So maybe just this you know, could be put in after that. And, you know, like instead of all these guidelines, maybe you could just have that and this.
I would almost put the cleanup after your disposal, that, I would have put that under maintain cleanliness.
Well, I was thinking we don't need any of this.
You think we
And,
could
and,
get
ma-
rid of it?
and maybe like our goal is, you know, to make sure that people aren't using sticky fingers on the book. So I don't know if there's some way to say that.
Well, that's where I think we have avoid foods that can leave residues. And that's where I feel like it was beneficial to have those. So I agree with food and drink are permitted in the library, but then I would say the following food and beverage guidelines are set to ensure the library remains a clean and welcoming space for everybody, responsibility of patrons, or just simply say maintain cleanliness, promote quiet environment, ensure safety, and have that sentence of the cleanup after yourself, dispose of trash, properly wipe down surfaces if necessary under maintain cleanliness. If we spell it out, it's there. Unfortunately, it might come under like needing to have and just say, hey, these are our policies. But again, I think a lot of our patrons are going to be, if they do bring in a special treat for story time, or if there's a special event or scouts or something and they have food or otherwise, it's a library. The intent of this policy is that they'll take good care of the library. I think our patrons are in that category of doing it already, but it doesn't hurt. And the purpose of policies is to have it spelled out.
Connie, you can go ahead and edit. That's fine. I was just,
Oh,
I
no,
think
I'm
this,
just gonna pop something in that,
Mm.
that kind of gets to the point, like maybe that, this is kind of what we have at Fitchburg State, but it gets to the idea of like to aid in the preservation and care of the library materials, furnishings, and electric equipment. And like, I'm wondering if this first paragraph could be something that could be included to get to some of the things that I think Alicia was talking about, like sticky fingers and materials.
the reason, yeah.
So,
Because if it's not an event, they're probably not going to have adults eating in the library. It's going to be the kids, who come in for the afternoon or whatever. And that's fine, but a granola bar or something is a little messy.
Mhm.
So like this.
I mean, did that kind of get at what some of the concerns were?
I agree. Yes, yes, I think it does address the.
Yep.
So would that go after food and beverage, food and drink are permitted in the library?
I think so.
And then this could just come up here.
I would make that a new sentence, yeah,
A new paragraph or,
or a new sentence.
okay. Sorry. There.
Do you feel like we can combine that food and drink are permitted in the library, and then the library staff has established a food and beverage policy to aid in the preservation? I think that's all one paragraph.
And then get rid of the responsibilities of patrons, because I think we covered all those things.
Mhm.
Unless the trustees feel like we need to state anything like clean up after yourself, do you think that that needs to be moved up to maintain cleanliness? Should we state that?
I think that one can come up. The other ones feel like they are already repeated.
Come up to, where?
I think
Here?
under maintain cleanliness, so like if you had,
Right here?
I think
Yeah.
so.
And then I think the rest we can get rid of.
This part.
Yeah. And now I'm questioning, sorry, but I'm questioning at the very top, the special events. And the way it reads to me is I would start with food and drink are permitted in the library, have that, and then just say special events underneath everything.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm just wondering if we want to say you can't eat at the computer anywhere.
That's not a designated area.
I'll have to fix this after.
Yeah, we can figure out spacing and text
Yeah.
and all that.
I mean, Chris B, what are your thoughts on people eating at a computer?
I would say it's probably not a good thing. There's not a whole lot of space there. There's just enough
Yeah.
room for the laptop. So they would be hard pressed to carry food over there and not have it sit on their lap. But I mean, if you want to just mark off that, the computer area is off limits to food and drink, that's fine.
So like, except at the computer.
Couldn't you just put a sign up on the computer desk saying no food, no beverages?
Could do.
You can go ahead and change whatever, that's fine.
So I think there's something that's, I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I mean,
It doesn't read properly, I know.
yeah, it was, I don't know that I can edit it. I feel like I can only suggest changes, so.
Oh, okay, so,
But I don't think it was a full sentence, because we said in order to maintain a pest-free environment and damage-free furnishings, the following food and beverage guidelines are set. I think it just wasn't supposed to be 2 sentences. I think it was supposed to be 1 sentence.
okay. I gotta fix that, sorry. Your library is so much bigger. Maybe we make
So-
pest-free environment, damage-free furnishings.
So
Maybe
we're
we
a
can just
little,
take this out and just say reduce litter.
we're a little bit redundant in this.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the combination, but at the same time, we're stating the same thing of like clean environment is literally stated twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you say in order to maintain a pest-free environment, reduce litter, the following, can you get rid of this?
Well, I think that the clean environment should be stated twice, or not should be stated twice, but I think it's important to include. But I feel like
Because you have it here.
exactly, but what I'm concerned is that we're saying like in order to maintain a pest-free environment, the word and damage-free furnishings needs to be modified one way or the other.
Mhm.
But we could say in order to maintain a pest-free environment, to reduce litter, to ensure a safe and clean environment, the following food and beverage guidelines are set, period.
Okay.
And
So
Yep.
get rid of this.
Yep. And
And
get
get
rid of
rid
the
of-
damage-free.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Oops, sorry. Did I do that? I didn't mean to put in a,
no, that's all right.
did I do that? I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, could you say, up here too is a little redundant. The library staff has established a food and beverage policy
Hmm.
to aid in the preservation and care of library materials, furnishings, and electronic equipment. In order to maintain a pest-free environment, the following food and beverage guidelines are set. We have like
Yeah,
food and
I
beverage
think
policy
very redundant.
and then food and beverage guidelines.
Yeah. So I feel like the library staff has established a food and beverage policy to aid in the preservation and care of the library materials, furnishings,
Maybe that's
electronic.
all we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we want to say permission to edit,
Yeah.
so if we want to include pest, how does that read?
It's kind of a long sentence. Can you put a period after electronic equipment, period? These policies are in place to help maintain blah, 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 blah.
That's good.
I like that. Thank you very much.
I think it looks good.
How do you guys feel? You all got hooked on this is a very quick and easy policy, and then 15 minutes later, no.
Not really.
Good job.
Could we shorten the first bullet under maintain cleanliness and just say dispose of trash properly and wipe surfaces if necessary?
I like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. I think it looks good.
Okay. So I could just say we reviewed up to the,
It would be up to the solicitation policy.
okay. So are we going to have another meeting like this to do this at some point in the future? I mean, to finish this?
I think so. It may, where Tom has left, it may benefit us to set a date at our next trustee meeting, and that's on the 6th of February, correct?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because we will also have, I would hope, a plan in place and feedback with regards to the Friends of Library. And so it may benefit having dates and being able to determine as a full board of trustees.
Are you guys all set with sharing the document?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll review the remaining policies at a future meeting to be determined at the trustees' February meeting.
Yep.
Thank you all. I hope
Yeah,
you're all
thank you
staying
all.
warm.
Yeah. So it's 8:38. We'll adjourn this meeting. Motion to adjourn.
Sure.
I'll make a motion.
So Morgan motioned
Second.
and I think Chris seconded. All in favor?
Uh,
500.